Hi, Dad. Welcome back to another episode of Dave and Andy's Honest About Life. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, pal. How are you?
Wonderful, thanks. Good to see you again.
Yes, always good to see you.
So, in this session, there's been a lot of lately. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of anchors, even a meteorologist. I think you probably saw on the news last night who had a health issue, like a serious health issue, live on air. And uh, in this case, I think it could be related to a number of different things, and I'm not going to speculate. But did I know that there is some less uh, sort of worrisome, instances that you can talk to about when you were live on the air. But the one that I think about, which is a little funny now, is the one where you were choking on a burger live on TV. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
I sure do. That was I forget which tournament it was, but it was a softball tournament. And I used to, when I do the weather, a lot of times I'd go out live and I'd do it live with, in this case, it was a huge group of people and also teams that got together. And it was a big tournament. I believe it was like, what did they call it? Some classic, Shingle Creek Classic or something up in Brooklyn Center. And yeah, I would do it live, and I think it was between softball games. I was doing a live report, live right on the air, and it was the 5 o'clock newscast. And I remember Wendy Lubovich and Mark Suppelsa were the anchors, and they thought it was a joke. But actually, what I had done is I talked before we opened my segment. I talked to the guy next to me, and I said, "Okay, you're going to do the weather for me. What you're going to do, I'm going to eat this hamburger and you're going to do the weather. And it's going to be right there on the screen. You're going to see it. Just tell me, what the temperature was and whatever." So we had it all set, right? So I go and take a big bite out of my hamburger, and Mark and Wendy throw it out to me, and I go, "He's going to do it." But I still had a big hamburger in my mouth, right? And then he freezes. This guy freezes, doesn't say a word. So I try to swallow it real quick, and it got stuck. And literally, I was like dying. I was turning purple. My eyes were popping out. And there was a big fireman next to me, thank goodness. A big, huge guy. And I'm not that small. I'm pretty big myself. And he picked me up and gave me the Heimlich, and right live, the camera followed me all the way down to the ground. I finally collapsed. I hadn't breathed for, I don't know, a minute and a half or so. And I was on the ground, and a big wad of hamburger comes out of my mouth, and I get up but Mark Suppelsa and Wendy Lubovich thought it was a shtick. They thought I was doing that as a joke, and I almost died while they were watching. So they were laughing. They thought it was great, but no, it wasn't that much fun. I was fearful for my life.
And to do that in front of a live audience.
That was in front of a lot of people that were standing there. So yeah, a lot of weird things happen when you're live on the air, and basically you can't do it over. It's live. And so once it comes out, it's done. And it was recorded, and I don't even know if that may be on YouTube as well.
And sorry to bring it back up and have you remember it again, but it's one of those things that I think about every time I see something happen, like a light would fall in the studio, or there's been a lot of earthquakes where everybody sort of stops, and then they're like, "Okay, do we leave the building? Do we stay here?" You've seen that lately too.
Yep, that's true.
I think about what sort of what you're thinking about when you're live and what you hope doesn't happen. And
I remember when Chroma Key was fairly new, and Ron Majors was a superstar here in the Twin Cities. Then he went to Chicago, became a superstar there for an news anchor. And he was doing a broadcast, and we have Chroma Key. That's where back then it was blue, but they would take blue out of the picture and then insert a picture there. Well, I just remember the light or something in the studio crashing down, and he thought it was coming down at his head because he was watching the screen behind him, which was just Chroma Key screen. It wasn't anything real, but the light had started to fall within that picture. So he put his head down on the desk and thought he was going to get hit in the back of the head with this light, but And everybody at home was wondering what the heck he was doing because they couldn't see it. So it was pretty funny.
Before we end this session of, your biggest worries and concerns and times that you had, happen live on air. The one that I remember particularly is this huge storm, and I think you remember this. There's this huge storm it went through Minneapolis, St. Paul. Is it I-94 that connects the two together, connects Minneapolis with St. Paul. I happen to be driving down that interstate that runs through St. Paul, and there was a huge rainstorm. If you remember, a lot of rain came down in a short period
I
of time.
remember this, Andy. I remember this. You had you had a Mercedes?
Oh, it's an old BMW. Yeah.
Old BMW. Okay. I remember that you stalled and you got on the news that night.
I did. The water was so deep in the lower areas of the interstate that the car was floating. So of course the car stalled out when I hit one of those big, big ponded water scenarios, and it was automatic windows. I rolled the window down as quickly as I could. I pushed the button and the window came down, and I swam out the window. And then I was pushing the car, through the water, and I turned around and there's a cameraman there. And that cameraman was catching all this, and he said, "Say something." And I said, "I have never seen a storm like this." And you happened to be going on right then. I think it was just before your segment. Is that right?
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I couldn't believe it. I mean, what are the odds of that happening? Yeah, you were right there, and I go, "That's my son." It was pretty wild. But one thing that I hoped that I was going to teach you when growing up: never cross running water, because
Right.
you don't know how deep it is, and serious things could have happened to you, buddy. And you don't know if the road has been washed out. So yeah, it's just don't cross. If you run into that, they say don't turn around. Don't try to go through it. Go back the way you came.
Right.
Because you don't know what's ahead of you. You don't know if the road's gone. You don't know how deep that water is. And cars float but then they sink.
For a minute they do. And you see a lot to your point, they have been trying to express that very point in all of these flooding scenarios in California.
Yep.
They're just getting hammered out there, and there are rescues every day for, folks that decide that they're going to try to get across the stream, and turns out the road is actually gone and their car washes away, and now they're stuck on the roof. And
yeah, don't drown, turn around is what I think the saying for the car. I think it says, "Don't drown, turn around," and that's the best thing, because you came from an area that you could drive through, but you don't know what's ahead of you. So just turn around, go back, get out of there.
That's good advice, Dad. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, nice.
All right, so that'll be the end of the session. Love you very much, Dad, and thank you for spending time with me again.
It's been fun. Thanks, buddy. Love you.
Love you. Bye now.
See ya.